My name is Naomi, and if you asked anyone who knows me who I am, they'd probably tell you I'm the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who always shows up on time, finishes her tasks, smiles politely, and never makes a fuss. I work behind a desk, tucked into a corner where the only real sound I hear each day is the tapping of my keyboard and the humming of the office lights above me. For 12 years, that desk has been my world. 12 years of emails, schedules, spreadsheets, and meetings that all blur together. 12 years of routines so predictable I could perform it in my sleep. Sometimes I catch my reflection in my computer screen, faint, almost ghost-like, and I wonder when exactly I disappeared. When did I slip quietly out of my own life and become someone who just exists? But there's something my coworkers don't know about me. Something small, hidden, almost fragile. I have a dream. A dream I stopped saying out loud a long time ago because every time I mentioned it, someone told me to be realistic. I want to be a singer. I always have. As a little girl, singing felt like breathing. I sang in church, in school talent shows, in my grandmother's kitchen while she seasoned Sunday dinner. My grandmother used to cup my face in her hands and tell me, "Baby, God put a song in you. Don't you dare let the world silence it." I held on to her words for years. But life has a way of burying dreams under responsibilities, bills, jobs, expectations. Eventually, singing became something I remembered, not something I lived. A part of that loss had a name, my husband, Marcus. We've been married for 8 years, and for most of that time he has reminded me, directly or indirectly, that some dreams are meant to die quietly. Whenever I mentioned singing again, he would laugh under his breath, pat my hand, and say, "Naomi, you're too old for all that now," or, "You should be grateful for what you have. Dreams don't pay the bills," or the one that always hit the hardest. "Come on, baby, you're not a singer anymore. Let it go." The worst part wasn't what he said, it was that somewhere deep inside, I believed him. But life has a funny way of nudging you awake when you least expect it. One Tuesday evening, I stayed late at work to finish a report. I was exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones, and to keep myself awake, I started humming. Nothing impressive, nothing big, just a soft melody I used to love as a kid, barely louder than a whisper. I thought I was alone until I heard a voice behind me. "Wow, you can really sing." I turned around, startled. It was one of my coworkers, someone I barely talked to. They didn't say it sarcastically or casually, they said it like they meant it. And for the first time in years, someone saw something in me that I had stopped seeing in myself. On the drive home, that simple sentence echoed in my mind. "You can really sing." It wrapped itself around every forgotten dream, every buried memory, every part of me I had tucked away. But then Marcus's voice rose in my head, drowning it out. "Naomi, be realistic. Naomi, you're too old. Naomi, don't embarrass yourself." His doubts used to feel like protection. Now they felt like chains. That night, I stood in the bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked older, not in years, but in spirit, like someone who had lived her life for everyone but herself. And I whispered, so softly I barely heard it, "Do you still remember how to dream?" Something inside me stirred, something I thought was gone. The next day during lunch, I pulled out my phone and typed, "Open mic nights near me." I don't know what possessed me to look, maybe desperation, maybe hope, maybe both. But I found a small cafe downtown. Warm lighting, open mic Fridays, a stage that looked both terrifying and welcoming. I stared at the sign-up button so long the screen dimmed. My heart pounded, my hands shook, but something deep inside whispered, "Try." So I clicked it. That evening, I told Marcus. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me hoped he'd surprise me, support me, smile and say he was proud. But he didn't smile. He didn't congratulate me. He sighed, long and annoyed, and said, "Naomi, why would you embarrass yourself like that?" He shook his head and added, "You're not 20 anymore. Don't make a fool of yourself." His words hit harder than he knew. Hard enough to bruise, hard enough to silence. But instead of shrinking, something in me rose up. Something strong. Something tired of being dismissed. For the first time in 8 years, his doubt didn't break me. It lit a fire. I practiced in secret. In the car before work. In the shower. Quietly while cooking dinner. Whisper singing into my pillow at night when Marcus fell asleep in front of the TV. I watched YouTube tutorials, downloaded vocal warm-up apps, and listened to old recordings of myself singing, recordings I had forgotten I even had. I wasn't great. I wasn't even good. But I was trying. And trying felt like breathing again. When Friday arrived, my nerves were so intense I could barely eat. Marcus didn't come with me. He didn't even ask what song I chose. He just said, "Be home before it gets too late." I got dressed slowly, carefully. Not fancy, just something that made me feel like myself. I looked in the mirror one last time and whispered, "You deserve this." I walked out the door alone. But for the first time, I didn't feel lonely. The cafe was warm and buzzing with soft chatter. Fairy lights draped across the ceiling cast a gentle glow, and mismatched chairs gave the place a charm that felt comforting. People laughed, read poetry, sipped tea, and nobody knew me. Nobody expected anything from me, and that anonymity made me brave. When they called my name, Naomi, my legs went numb. I walked to the small wooden stage, gripping the microphone like it might run away. The music started, and my stomach twisted into knots. But then I closed my eyes. And I remembered the little girl who used to sing in her grandmother's kitchen. My first note shook. My second cracked. I almost turned and walked off the stage. But then something inside me, something old and familiar, steadied. I kept going. I sang through the fear, through the doubt, through the years of silence and the weight of Marcus's voice telling me I wasn't enough. I sang from the deepest part of me, the part that had been waiting for this moment for far too long. When the song ended, the room paused. One still second that felt like an eternity. Then, applause. Not roaring, not thunderous, but real, warm, human. I stepped off stage holding back tears, made it to my car, closed the door, and cried. Cried for the girl I used to be. Cried for the woman I was becoming. Cried because I finally recognized myself again. That night, sitting alone in my car with mascara smudged down my cheeks, I understood something powerful. People can doubt you. People can underestimate you. People can even try to convince you that your dream has an expiration date, but they don't get to choose your destiny. Only you do, and for the first time in a very long time. I chose me. I didn't know it yet, but that tiny open mic, that shaky, imperfect performance, was the beginning of everything. The moment my life quietly turned a corner. The moment I stepped into the woman I was always meant to become. And once that door opened, I knew I could never go back. After that first open mic night, something inside me shifted. It wasn't dramatic or obvious, not the kind of change you could see just by looking at me, but it was real. It was like a small flame had finally caught fire after years of living in the dark. A flame that whispered, "Keep going." For days, I replayed the memory over and over again in my mind. Not the applause, not the shaking nerves, not even the song itself, but the feeling of being alive, the feeling of returning to myself, the feeling of stepping into a room without asking for permission to take up space. I hadn't felt that in so long. But when I came home that night, Marcus barely looked up from the couch. He just asked, "So, did you get it out of your system?" And before I answered, he added, "Good. Now we can get back to normal, back to normal, back to small, back to quiet, back to the version of me that didn't dream out loud." But the truth was, I didn't want to go back. And for once, his expectations didn't outweigh my desires. A tiny part of me, the stubborn part, the hungry part, whispered, "No, not this time." I didn't tell him that I planned to go back the next Friday, or that the cafe owner had approached me afterward and said, "You should come again. You have something." Those words replayed in my mind like a melody. You have something. I wasn't sure what that something was yet, but it was enough to keep me going. That entire week at work, I found myself humming again. Not because I was bored, not because I needed to stay awake, but because something in me was waking up. My coworkers noticed it too. One of them smiled and said, "Naomi, you seem lighter." I didn't know how to answer, but I felt it. For the first time in years, I wasn't dragging myself through the day. I was moving towards something. Friday came faster than I expected. This time, I wasn't terrified. Still nervous, still unsure, but there was excitement too. A spark. When I stepped onto the stage again, the mic didn't feel like a threat. The room didn't feel like an enemy. And my voice felt stronger. People listened, really listened. And when I finished singing, something happened I didn't expect. A woman in the audience approached me and said, "Your voice. It touched something in me. Thank you for that. Her words felt like a key turning in a lock. The lock I had placed around my own dreams. After the show, the cafe owner, a man named Daniel with warm eyes and a too loud laugh, asked if I'd ever considered doing a longer set. I laughed at first, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. You have potential, he said. You're raw, but you're real. People connect to real potential. A word I hadn't heard applied to me in a long time. I drove home floating. Until I stepped inside. Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table, arms crossed, jaw tight. You went again? He asked, already knowing the answer. I nodded, feeling my excitement shrink under the weight of his stare. Then he said the words that would change everything. Naomi, I don't know what fantasy you're chasing, but it's time to grow up. You're embarrassing yourself. And me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Embarrassing him? After working, supporting, sacrificing, shrinking myself smaller and smaller each year. I was an embarrassment? A heat rose inside me. Not anger, but awakening. I realized then that he didn't fear my failure. He feared my success. He feared the version of me that didn't need his permission to live. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time I saw the truth. His disbelief wasn't about me. It never was. It was about his own limitations, his own insecurities, his own fear of being left behind by a woman who was finally stepping into her light. Without raising my voice, without trembling like I used to, I said, Marcus, I'm not stopping. He scoffed and said, then don't expect me to support you. I didn't respond. Not because I agreed, but because something inside me whispered the most freeing truth I had ever felt. I don't need your support. That night, I slept with a strange peace in my chest, a quiet determination, a promise to myself. Over the next few weeks, I returned to the cafe again and again. I practiced, improved, experimented. My voice grew stronger, richer, clearer. People started recognizing me, cheering for me, asking when I'd perform again. I wasn't famous, I wasn't even known. But something bigger was happening. I was becoming the person I had always been meant to be. One night, after a particularly emotional performance, a young man approached me and said, I record vocals. I'd love to help you put something together. My heart flipped. A real recording. A real chance. I said yes. Of course I said yes. But as I drove home that night, excitement buzzing through my veins, fear crept in too. Not fear of failing, but fear of how Marcus would react. I sat in the driveway for a long time before going inside. I rehearsed what I would say. I tried to predict the argument before it even happened. But when I walked through the door, something surprised me. Marcus looked up, studied me for a moment, and said, You're serious about this, aren't you? I nodded. Quiet, steady, unapologetic. He sighed, not angry this time, but almost defeated. I just don't want you hurt, he muttered. But I heard the truth beneath his words. He didn't want to lose me to a version of myself he didn't recognize. I stepped closer. Marcus, I'm already hurt when I don't try. He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that felt unfamiliar. Fear. Not of me chasing a dream, but of me becoming someone he could no longer control. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just said, I'm doing this. And this time, he didn't stop me. He just watched me, silent and uncertain, as if realizing that the quiet woman he married was gone, and a new woman, a stronger woman, had taken her place. What I didn't know then was that the path ahead would be harder than I imagined, more challenging, more painful, more beautiful. But that night, for the first time in my entire life, I felt something I had never truly felt before. I felt unstoppable. The next few weeks felt like stepping into a new version of my life, one I had once watched from a distance, imagining it but never believing I'd get close enough to touch it. I started recording with the young producer, whose name was Jordan. He worked out of a small studio tucked behind an old thrift shop, tiny, warm, cluttered with cables and half-broken sound panels, but full of creativity and possibility. The air always smelled like coffee, dust, and ambition. The first time I stepped into the recording booth, I froze. My voice caught in my throat. Not because I didn't know what to sing, but because it suddenly felt real. Too real. Like one wrong note might prove every fear I'd ever had. Jordan noticed. He didn't push. He didn't criticize. He just said, Take your time. Your voice will come out when it's ready. It always does. And somehow, that was enough. When I finally opened my mouth and sang the first few lines, something inside me clicked, like a lock I'd been carrying inside my chest had finally found the right key. My voice shook, yes, but it was real, raw, honest. Everything I'd been holding back for years found its way into the microphone in front of me. We spent hours recording, hours fixing small mistakes and celebrating big breakthroughs. I learned how to breathe differently, how to place my tone, how to trust the rise and fall of a melody without overthinking it. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. Every second of it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I had abandoned long ago. At home, things were quiet. Too quiet. Marcus stopped questioning where I was going. He stopped commenting on my late nights or the notebook of lyrics I kept on the kitchen table. He didn't encourage me, but he didn't discourage me either. He simply watched, like he was observing a stranger living in his house. One evening, after another recording session, he asked, "So, what's the end goal here?" I shrugged. "Growing, learning, seeing where it goes." He nodded slowly, but the tension in his jaw returned. "So there's no plan? Just hoping something happens?" I looked at him and smiled gently, a smile I didn't realize held so much truth. Maybe for the first time in my life, I don't need a perfect plan. I just need a chance. He didn't argue. He just stared at me, confused by a version of me he'd never taken the time to know. I could sense the distance growing between us, not because I was leaving him behind, but because he refused to walk with me. He loved the woman who didn't ask for more, not the woman who dared to expand. But I didn't push him. I didn't beg for support. I didn't apologize for wanting more. I simply kept going. And the universe began meeting me halfway. One night at the cafe, after a set where I debuted one of the songs we recorded, a woman approached me, tall, confident, dressed like someone who knew the industry better than most. She introduced herself as Elena, a vocal coach, a mentor, someone with connections in the small but growing music scene. "I've been watching you," she said, her voice steady and warm. "You have something rare. Not just a voice, a story. And you sing like someone who's lived it." I stood there, stunned. She handed me her card. "Call me. I'd like to help you develop your sound." For the rest of the night, my hands trembled from excitement. When I told Marcus, he didn't share the moment with me. Instead, he muttered, "You're getting carried away. You know how many people try this and fail?" I looked at him, really looked, and the weight of his words didn't crush me this time. It clarified something inside me. "I'm not them," I said softly. "But you're acting like it," he muttered. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But hurt no longer controlled me. I called Elena. Our first meeting wasn't glamorous. She rented a small rehearsal room with terrible acoustics and a piano that was missing 2 keys. But she listened, really listened, to my voice, to my fears, to the dreams I barely whispered. "Your tone," she said, "is beautiful. But you hold back when you sing, like you're apologizing for being heard." Her words hit me hard. Too hard. Because they were true. She taught me breathwork, projection, placement, but the most valuable thing she taught me wasn't technical. It was emotional. "Your voice cannot grow in a cage," she said. "You have to sing like you deserve to take up space, like your story matters." Because it does. I practiced every day, in the car, in the kitchen, in the shower, in that tiny rehearsal room. Slowly, my voice changed, evolved, grew stronger than I ever imagined. People at the cafe noticed. Strangers approached me after performances, telling me my songs made them cry, or remember someone, or face something they'd been avoiding. Music was becoming more than a dream. It was becoming a connection, a bridge. Then, one night, something happened that I never expected. After a performance, Daniel, the cafe owner, pulled me aside. "Naomi, a promoter was here tonight. He heard you. He wants you to open at a small showcase next month." My heart stopped. A showcase. An actual stage. Real equipment. Real audience. Real opportunity. I felt the tears rise before I could stop them. When I got home, I told Marcus, hoping, maybe foolishly, that he would finally see that this wasn't a phase. He didn't smile. He didn't congratulate me. He didn't even pretend. He said, "So now you're chasing spotlight gigs? Naomi, when is enough? Enough?" I stared at him, stunned. "Enough?" I whispered. "I'm just beginning." He shook his head, dismissive. "Well, I hope you're prepared for disappointment." I looked at him, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel the urge to shrink. I felt the urge to stand, not against him, but for myself. I whispered, "Marcus." The only disappointment would be never trying. He didn't answer. He just picked up his phone and turned away. That was the moment I realized the truth I had been avoiding. Marcus wasn't losing his wife. He was losing control. But I was gaining myself. The showcase was approaching. My voice was growing. My confidence was finally blooming. And a new chapter, one I had feared for years but finally felt ready for, was waiting for me on the other side of that stage. The month leading up to the showcase felt like living inside a storm. Loud, unpredictable, and strangely energizing. Every day brought a new mix of excitement, fear, and determination. I practiced constantly. I sang until my throat felt warm and tired. I rehearsed in the car, in the kitchen, in the shower, even walking from my desk to the break room at work. Every free moment became a rehearsal. Every breath felt like preparation. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Elena pushed me harder than anyone ever had. But she also believed in me more than anyone ever had. "You need to sing from the wound," she said one evening as we practiced in the studio. She tapped her sternum gently. "Right here. People don't connect to perfection. They connect to truth. Let them hear yours." And I did. Even when it hurt. Even when memories surfaced I had spent years trying to bury. Even when I felt vulnerable enough to break. My voice was changing. Growing. Becoming something fuller. Deeper. Richer. Something that came from a part of me I had never dared to explore. But while my voice grew stronger, things at home grew colder. Marcus stopped asking about my performances. Stopped acknowledging my rehearsals. Stopped pretending to support me. Our conversations became short, clipped exchanges, the kind couples have when they are living parallel lives under the same roof. One night, he finally said, "I feel like I don't even know you anymore." His voice wasn't angry. It was confused, lost. I whispered, "Maybe for the first time, you're seeing the real me." He didn't answer. He just walked away. Days passed like that. Two people sharing a space, but not a life. He stayed later at work. I stayed later at the studio. And we both pretended not to notice. The night of the showcase arrived like a tidal wave. The venue wasn't huge, a converted warehouse with string lights and a makeshift stage, but to me, it felt like Madison Square Garden. The air buzzed with chatter, laughter, and anticipation. Musicians tuned their instruments. Singers warmed up in quiet corners. And there I was, standing backstage with trembling hands and a heart beating so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I kept checking the door, wondering if Marcus would walk through it. Part of me wanted him there. Part of me didn't. Part of me just wanted closure. As showtime got closer, I realized something painful but freeing. I wasn't singing for him. Not tonight. Not anymore. I was singing for me. When Daniel finally called my name, the world seemed to tilt. My legs felt heavy, my breath shallow. But the moment my foot touched the stage, something shifted inside me, a familiar calm, a quiet strength, the same feeling that washed over me during my first open mic night. The crowd faded, the lights softened, and for a moment, it was just me, just Naomi, just the girl who had loved singing long before life told her to be quiet. I closed my eyes and began. My voice came out steady, clear, strong. Not perfect, but full of emotion, full of truth. I sang about longing, about forgetting yourself while loving someone else, about rediscovering your own heartbeat after years of silence, about losing and becoming, about rising. And somewhere in the middle of the second verse, something broke open inside me. Not a crack, not a fracture, but a blooming, a release. Years of swallowed dreams poured out of me. Years of apologizing melted away. Years of doubt loosened their grip. And as my voice lifted, I felt something I had never felt before. I felt free. When the song ended, the audience was silent for a split second. That quiet moment where time holds its breath, and then applause erupted. Not polite clapping, not mild approval, but genuine, heartfelt, enthusiastic applause that filled the room. People rose to their feet. Some wiped tears. Some shouted my name. I stood there, stunned, soaking in the warmth of a moment I had waited my whole life to feel. Backstage, musicians congratulated me. Strangers hugged me. A local blogger asked for a quick interview. Someone else asked if I had music on streaming platforms. It felt unreal, like stepping into a dream I had once whispered into the dark. But in the middle of all the celebration, I noticed someone standing near the back of the room, Marcus. He hadn't clapped. He hadn't smiled. He just stood there, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Part shock, part worry, part something I couldn't quite name. When I walked toward him, he spoke first. Naomi, I didn't know you could sing like that. His voice was quiet, almost fragile. I answered softly, I didn't know either. Until I finally tried. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. Everyone was watching you, he said. You? You were the center of the room. I know, I whispered. There was a pause. Heavy, loaded, full of truth. Then he finally said the words I had been waiting years to hear. I think I underestimated you. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, one he'd never offered before. Still, beneath his words, I felt a deeper shift. Something unspoken. Something he wasn't ready to admit. He wasn't sure where he fit in my new life. And I didn't know either. As I left the venue, applause still echoing in my ears, I walked outside into the cool night air feeling alive, expanded, changed. That showcase wasn't the end. It wasn't even the peak. It was the beginning. A doorway into a world I once thought was closed to me. And though I didn't know what would happen next, I felt a certainty deep inside my chest. I was stepping onto a path I was always meant to walk, and no matter who joined me or who didn't, I was going forward. The morning after the showcase, I woke up with my voice slightly hoarse, my body aching with exhaustion, but my spirit felt electric, alive, awake in a way I had never experienced. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the applause in my mind, the way it had washed over me like warm light, the way it had filled places inside me that had felt empty for years. If I closed my eyes, I could still feel the vibrations of the microphone, the warmth of the stage lights on my skin, the energy of the room leaning in to listen. It didn't feel like a memory. It felt like a beginning. When I walked into the kitchen, Marcus was already up, sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone. He glanced at me briefly. You were out late, he said. Not angry, just factual. I poured myself a cup of tea. I stayed after. People wanted to talk. It was a big night. He nodded once, still looking at his phone. I waited a moment, hoping he'd ask something. How I felt, what happened, what the promoter said, but he didn't. Finally, he added. You sounded good. It wasn't much, but coming from Marcus, it was almost monumental. Still, it landed strangely, like a compliment wrapped in confusion. He didn't know whether to be proud or threatened, supportive or skeptical, impressed or insecure, and truthfully, I didn't know what to do with that, either. I left it there, letting silence settle between us. Later that day, Daniel from the cafe called me. Naomi, the promoter loved you, he said. He wants you back. There's another showcase in 6 weeks, bigger venue, larger crowd, and he's thinking about putting together a small artist roster. My chest tightened, not with fear but with exhilaration. A roster? I repeated. As in, representing artists? Exactly, he said. He thinks you have potential to build an audience. I could barely speak. I thanked him, hung up the phone, and sat on the edge of my bed for a long moment, hand pressed over my heart. Not because it was beating fast, but because it felt full. Too full. I wasn't just dreaming anymore. This was real. Real enough to taste, real enough to reach for. I wanted to tell Marcus, but something inside me paused, an instinct, a quiet knowing. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I wanted to protect it. Not every seed needs an audience while it's rooting. Instead, I called Elena. When she answered, I could hear the excitement in her voice before I even spoke. I heard about the showcase, she said. People were talking about you. I knew it would happen. I told her about the promoter, the offer, the possibility of being part of a roster, about the next showcase. She didn't sugarcoat it. This is where it gets serious, she warned. The industry opens doors, but it tests you too. You'll have to work harder, stay grounded, and stay true to your story. People will try to shape you. Don't let them take your voice. I won't, I said, surprising myself with how certain I sounded, and I meant it. Over the next few weeks, my life settled into a new rhythm. Work during the day, rehearsals in the evening, vocal training on weekends, meetings with Jordan for recording sessions whenever our schedules lined up. It was exhausting, beautifully exhausting. Every night I collapsed into bed, throat tired, back sore, mind buzzing. But it was the kind of tired that felt right. Like building something. Like becoming someone. People at work noticed. "You've been glowing lately," someone said. Another coworker added. "You look happier. More. You." And they were right. I felt more like myself than I had in years, maybe ever. But with every step forward, the space between me and Marcus widened. Not in a dramatic way. There were no shouting matches, no slammed doors, just a quiet, steady drifting. He would ask fewer questions, offer fewer conversations. He seemed uncomfortable with the change, unsure of where he fit in my new world, a world that didn't revolve around playing small. One evening, while I was getting ready to leave for rehearsal, he finally said something that sat heavy in the air. "You're gone a lot," he murmured. "I'm working," I said gently. "This is important to me." He looked down at his hands. "I know. I just feel like I'm becoming a background character in your life." His honesty surprised me. Not because he said it, but because it was true. "I don't want that," I said quietly. "I want you with me. But I can't shrink anymore. Not to make someone else comfortable." He didn't respond, just nodded, defeated. And something inside me realized that no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't carry both my dream and his fears at the same time. A choice was slowly forming on the horizon, and I could feel it approaching. The night of my second showcase arrived faster than I expected. This venue was bigger, 2 floors, proper lighting, real sound equipment, a crowd that didn't just wander in by accident. They came to listen. Backstage, my nerves trembled, but beneath the nerves was something stronger, purpose. Elena squeezed my shoulders. "Whatever happens tonight, you show them your heart. That's your power, Naomi. That's what they'll remember." When I stepped onto the stage, the crowd murmured with anticipation. And then, silence. I opened my mouth and sang. And this time, something extraordinary happened. My voice didn't just fill the room, it soared. It moved. It carried pieces of my story into the air like confessions wrapped in melody. I wasn't performing anymore. I was releasing, healing, transforming. By the time I finished, people weren't just applauding, they were cheering, calling my name, asking for another song, reaching out. After the show, the promoter approached me with a smile that stretched ear to ear. "Naomi, we need to talk. I think you're ready for something bigger. I have an opportunity, a real one." And just like that, my world tilted again. My breath caught, my hands shook, my heart soared. This was it. The moment I had once believed would never come. But as I listened, excitement flooding my chest, something else tugged at me gently, quietly. A thought, a truth. To step forward into this new life, I would have to decide what, and who, I was willing to carry with me. Because the path ahead was opening quickly. And not everyone was meant to walk it by my side. When the promoter pulled me aside after the show, the energy backstage felt electric, people laughing, lights flashing, the thrum of music vibrating through the walls. But around us, everything grew still. He looked at me with a seriousness that made my breath stall. "Naomi," he said, "I've been scouting artists for over a decade, and what you have isn't common. Your voice isn't just good, it's honest. It makes people feel something. I want to offer you a spot on a small regional tour we're putting together." A tour. The word hit me like a wave, warm, powerful, almost impossible to stand against. My heart hammered. My legs felt like they weren't fully beneath me. "A tour?" I repeated, barely above a whisper. He nodded. "Just the East Coast. 6 cities, short sets. But it's exposure. Real exposure. And it would give you everything you need to build momentum, audience, connections, visibility. Think about it. I can send the details tomorrow." My throat tightened, not with fear, but with awe. This was the kind of opportunity people dream of and never touch. This was the moment the universe stretched out its hand and said, "Come on then, step forward." I thanked him, and then I stepped into the cool night air, my breath fogging in front of me as I pulled out my phone. My first instinct was to call Marcus, but my thumb hovered over his name. A hollow feeling rose inside me, not because I didn't want to share the news with him, but because I didn't know if he would celebrate with me, or pull back, or say something careful and measured that would dim the light I was carrying in my chest. So instead, I called Elena. When she answered, her voice erupted with joy. "Naomi, how did it go?" I felt it. I knew something big was coming. I told her everything. The applause, the promoter, the tour, the future opening like a road paved in golden light. She listened, breathless, and then said, "You have to do this. You know that, right? This is what you've worked for. This is what every step has led to. I know, I whispered. But Marcus. She stopped me gently. Naomi, someone who loves you shouldn't be afraid of your light. They should be inspired by it. Her words settled over me like a soft truth. When I got home that night, Marcus was on the couch watching TV. He muted it when I walked in. You're late again, he said quietly. I set my bag down. I know. I'm sorry. The show ran long. He looked at me, really looked, and I could see the unease in his eyes. How was it? He asked. I swallowed. It was incredible. Better than I ever imagined. And the promoter offered me something, a chance to go on a small tour. Just 6 cities. It would only be a few weeks total. His face changed instantly. Not anger, not excitement, fear. Naomi, a tour? That's not just a hobby anymore. That's a whole different lifestyle. You'd barely be home. I know, I said softly, and I want it. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his forehead. Have you really thought this through? Your job, the stability, our life. You can't just run off chasing a dream like you're 20. The words stung more than I expected. I'm not running, I said. I'm walking into something I've always wanted, something I've worked for. But what about us? He pressed. What happens when you're gone half the time? What happens when you're around musicians, producers, agents? I'm not built for that world, and I don't want to lose you to it. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You won't lose me. This doesn't have to change us, unless we let it. He shook his head, voice barely above a whisper. I just don't know if I can live with this version of you. The room fell painfully silent. This version of me, the version I had fought to become, the version I had earned through fear, sacrifice, and courage, the version that felt alive for the first time in her life. I sat beside him and spoke softly. Marcus, I love you, but I can't shrink myself to fit the life we had before, and I can't pretend I'm not changing, because I am. I'm growing. I'm becoming someone I'm proud of, and I want you with me. I want you to believe in me the way I've always believed in you. He stared at the floor. His silence said more than any argument could. That night, when I lay in bed beside him, the distance between us felt like an entire ocean, and I knew, with a clarity that hurt, that the road ahead wasn't just about music. It was about truth, about choosing myself, about embracing the woman I was becoming, even if it meant letting go of the parts of my life that were unwilling to grow with me. The next morning, I checked my email. The tour details were there. Dates, cities, expectations, compensation. And at the very top was a simple line. We'd love to have you on board, Naomi. I stared at it for a long time. My hands trembled. My heart pounded like it was trying to break free from my ribs. This was real. This was happening. I took a deep breath, the kind that feels like opening a door, and whispered to myself, this is my moment, and I'm not letting it pass. I clicked reply, typed the words that would change everything. I'm in. And as I hit send, I felt it. The shift, the release, the rise. My life had officially split into before and after, and there was no turning back now. The morning after I accepted the tour offer, the world felt different. Not visually, the sky was still soft with early sunlight, the air still cool, my apartment still quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. But inside, something had shifted. It felt like my soul had taken its first full breath. I got out of bed carefully, trying not to wake Marcus, even though I knew he wasn't deeply asleep. He'd been restless all night, rolling over, sighing, shifting. As I moved around the room, I felt his eyes briefly open, watching me through the dim light. But he didn't say anything, and neither did I. There was a heaviness between us. Not anger, not a fight, but a quiet grief, like we were standing at opposite ends of a path that used to run straight, and now suddenly curved in 2 different directions. I didn't try to solve it. Not today, because today, I had something else to prepare for. I made myself a cup of tea, not coffee. I needed the warmth, not the caffeine. Something gentle, something grounding. As I wrapped my hands around the mug, I opened the email again, the one from the tour manager. 6 cities, 3 weeks, 1 dream. The details flooded my screen. Travel itinerary. Rehearsal schedule. Per diem information. Stage crew introductions. Performance expectations. A reminder to bring comfortable shoes and an open heart. I laughed softly at that last part. An open heart. That, I had. More open than ever, and more vulnerable than ever too. I didn't realize I was smiling until I caught myself in the reflection of the microwave door. The woman staring back at me. She looked awake. Alive. Purposeful. She looked like someone who had decided to trust her own voice. I packed slowly that afternoon, folding clothes one by one, laying out my journal, my microphone, and a small necklace my mother gave me when I was a teenager, a tiny gold treble clef. She told me once, "Even if you forget your way, your voice will remember." I held it for a long moment before placing it gently into my bag. When I walked into the bedroom to grab a sweater, Marcus was sitting up with his elbows resting on his knees, staring at the floor. He didn't look angry. He looked conflicted, torn, afraid. "Are you really going through with this?" he asked quietly. I sat at the edge of the bed, leaving space between us. "Yes," I said softly. "I am." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Do you know how long you'll be gone?" 3 weeks. "And after that?" I hesitated. "I don't know, Marcus, but I do know that this tour could change things. It could open doors." He rubbed the back of his neck, voice cracking slightly. "I just wish things didn't have to change so fast." I looked down at my hands. "They aren't changing fast," I whispered. "They've been changing for years. You just didn't see it until now." The words hung in the air like a truth neither of us wanted to touch. He stood up and walked across the room, stopping at the dresser, gripping the edges like they could hold him together. "I'm scared," he said finally. "I'm scared that you're becoming someone I don't know how to love." The sentence cut deep, not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. I rose slowly and walked toward him. "Marcus, I never wanted to outgrow us. I wanted us to grow together. But I can't stay small to make us feel stable. That's not love. That's fear." He closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. "I don't know how to fix this." My voice softened. "You don't have to fix anything. You just have to try. And right now, it doesn't feel like you're trying." He didn't respond. He didn't reach for me. He just stood there, caught between wanting me close and wanting the world to stay the way it used to be. I picked up my suitcase. My heart thinned into a tight line. "I leave tomorrow morning," I said gently. "I hope you're still here when I get back." I didn't mean it as an ultimatum. It was simply the truth. That evening, I met with the small band who would be performing with me on the tour. The rehearsal studio was warm, dimly lit, and smelled faintly of old wood and coffee grounds. The kind of place where dreams feel comfortable stretching their legs. They welcomed me with easy smiles and kind hearts. Isaac, the guitarist, had a laugh that filled the room. Mia, the backup singer, had a voice that felt like silk. And Jordan, the drummer, tapped rhythms even when he wasn't trying to. We rehearsed until my throat was warm and my body buzzing with adrenaline. Song after song, note after note, moment after moment of pure, unfiltered joy. At one point Mia looked at me, eyes wide with admiration. "Naomi, you sing like someone who's finally telling the truth." Her words nearly brought me to tears. When I got home late that night, the apartment was quiet. Marcus was asleep on the couch, the TV still playing quietly, a blanket draped over him. I stood there for a moment, just watching him, the man who had been with me through years of routine, stability, predictability, the man who once held my dreams in his hands but didn't know what to do with them. I gently turned off the TV and placed a pillow under his head. He stirred slightly but didn't wake. I leaned down and whispered softly, "I hope one day you see me the way I see myself now." Then I turned off the last remaining light, walked into the bedroom, and closed the door behind me. Lying there in the dark, the weight of everything settled around me. The tour, the opportunity, the fear, the distance growing between Marcus and me, the future opening like a horizon I had never dared look at. And despite everything, my heart whispered one simple truth. "This is your time, Naomi. You're stepping into the life you were meant to live." I held on to that truth as sleep finally pulled me under. Tomorrow, the journey would begin. The morning I left for the tour, the world felt strangely quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. I woke before sunrise, long before my alarm, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement swirling through my chest. It wasn't fear anymore, not really. It was something deeper, something that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing the wind was finally ready to carry you. I moved through the apartment slowly. The soft glow from the streetlights slipped through the blinds, painting stripes across the living room floor. Marcus was still asleep on the couch, curled beneath the blanket I'd placed over him the night before. His breathing was steady, his face peaceful in a way that made everything inside me ache. A part of me wanted him to wake up, to look at me, to say something like, "I'm proud of you," or "Go chase your dreams," something that would let me leave without the tightness in my heart. But he didn't stir, and maybe that was my answer. I stood there for a moment, just watching him, the man who had shared so much of my life but didn't know how to walk with me into this new chapter. I whispered a quiet goodbye, not because I was leaving him forever, but because I was leaving the version of myself who needed his permission. My suitcase wheels clicked softly against the hallway floor as I made my way out the door. The morning air was crisp, cool against my skin, carrying that faint scent of dew and possibility. The world was still waking up, stretching its limbs, whispering promises of what could be. The ride to the airport felt surreal. Every traffic light, every passing building, every moment felt like it was happening underwater, slow, dreamlike, suspended in time. My driver tried making conversation, asking where I was headed, and when I told him I was going on tour, he grinned. "Big things ahead," he said. And somehow, that simple sentence felt like a blessing. When I arrived at the airport, the rest of the band was already there, gathered around a cluster of suitcases and instrument cases. Isaac waved wildly when he saw me. "There she is, our star," he shouted. I laughed, shaking my head. "I'm definitely not the star," I said. But inside, a soft part of me whispered, "Maybe you are." Mia hugged me, smelling faintly of lavender and excitement. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded, more than I've ever been. We boarded the plane, and as it lifted off the ground, I pressed my forehead gently against the window, watching the city shrink beneath us. The world I knew, the routines, the doubts, the familiarity, slowly became small enough to fit into the palm of my hand. Somewhere between the clouds and the rising sunlight, I felt my old life drift away. When we arrived in the first city, Charlotte, everything happened fast. The tour manager, Tony, was waiting for us at the gate, booming voice and energy so loud it pulled me out of my thoughts instantly. "All right, team. Buses are ready. We're on a tight schedule today. Sound check in 2 hours." He barked. We barely had time to drop our bags at the hotel before we were shepherded into a van headed straight for the venue. My pulse quickened as I stared out at the passing streets. New city, new crowd, new stage. The possibilities felt endless and terrifying all at once. When we reached the theater, I stepped inside, and the breath caught in my throat. The stage was huge, larger than anything I had ever stood on. The empty seats stretched far into the darkness, an ocean of shadows waiting to be filled with faces and applause and expectation. My chest tightened with something dangerous, doubt. For a moment, I wondered if I belonged here. If maybe I had pushed too far, reached too high, stepped into shoes too big for me. But then I heard Mia humming softly behind me, warming up her voice. I saw Isaac tuning his guitar, grinning like a kid on Christmas. I watched Jordan tapping out rhythms on his thighs, already lost in the music. And I remembered, I wasn't alone. Sound check started smoothly. My voice carried through the massive room, echoing back to me like a promise I had made to myself long ago. Even the crew paused sometimes to listen. Subtle, unspoken acknowledgments that made my cheeks warm. But it wasn't until after sound check that the first real challenge hit me. As we walked backstage, Tony approached with a clipboard. "All right, Naomi," he said. "We've added something last minute. The promoters want you to open the show completely solo. No band, no backup, just you, one song." My heart stopped. "Solo?" I repeated. He nodded. "It gives the show a stronger introduction, more emotional impact. You'll be great." I nodded automatically, but inside, it felt like everything was collapsing. A solo opening? On my first night? In front of hundreds of strangers? My anxiety surged like a wave threatening to drag me under. I stepped into the dressing room, closed the door, and pressed my hands against the edge of the counter to steady myself. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed, trembling, unsure. That voice I thought I had silenced, the old voice, the insecure voice, whispered, "What if this is too much? What if you mess up? What if you fail?" I closed my eyes, and then, slowly, I remembered something. The girl who sang quietly at her desk during lunch breaks. The woman who stepped into her first open mic with shaking hands. The performer who just weeks ago turned an entire room breathless with her voice. I whispered to myself, "You didn't come this far to be small." I lifted my chin, straightened my shoulders, and walked out of that dressing room with a different kind of fire in my chest. The minutes before the show passed in a blur. The low hum of the audience, the crew rushing around backstage, the faint vibration of the speakers warming up, and then, the stage manager whispered, "Naomi, you're on." I stepped into the light. The brightness was blinding, the room impossibly silent, and for a moment, just a moment, everything froze. Then I opened my mouth and sang, a slow, aching melody. A song about courage. A song about breaking free. A song about becoming. The room melted into the music. I felt the lyrics pour out of me like truth, like confession, like prayer. When I finished, there was a split second of silence, a heartbeat, and then the crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, whistles. A wave of sound so powerful it felt like it lifted me off the ground. And in that moment, I knew I belonged here, on this stage, in this dream, inside this version of myself. When I walked off stage, Mia grabbed me in a hug, Isaac shouted, "I told you so," and Jordan slapped the wall in excitement. But it was when Tony approached me, eyes gleaming, that the truth hit deepest. That, he said, was the moment everyone in that crowd became your fan. I felt tears prick my eyes, not from fear this time, but from gratitude. That night, lying in the unfamiliar hotel bed, my voice still echoing in my chest, I replayed the show over and over, every note, every breath, every heartbeat, and quietly, softly, my heart whispered, "This is only the beginning." The morning after my first show on the tour, I woke up with my voice still humming and my heart still floating somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. Sunlight leaked through the hotel curtains in soft gold streaks, warming my cheeks as I slowly opened my eyes. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The room looked unfamiliar, too neat, too quiet, too temporary. Then it all came rushing back. The applause, the energy, the impossible feeling of standing alone in that spotlight and not just surviving, but thriving. I smiled to myself as I stretched under the hotel sheets. My body was tired in a good way, the kind of tired that comes from pouring your soul into something that matters. I reached for my phone out of instinct. A part of me wondered if Marcus had texted, if maybe he'd seen videos of the show online, or heard from one of our mutual friends. Something, anything. But the screen lit up quietly, and there was nothing. Not a message, not a missed call, just silence. I swallowed hard, trying not to let the absence sting too deeply. This journey was mine. I wasn't going to let the lack of his support dim what I had accomplished. I placed the phone face down on the nightstand and whispered, "Today is a new day." After breakfast with the band, laughter echoing across the table, everyone recapping the previous night's show like we were still high on the energy, we loaded into the van for city number 2, Atlanta. The drive felt both long and short at the same time. Miles passed outside the window like scenes flipping in a movie. Trees blurred together, billboards flashed by, and the world felt wider than it ever had before. Isaac sat beside me strumming his guitar quietly, working out a new riff. Mia hummed harmonies under her breath. Jordan tapped rhythms on whatever surface was closest, the seat, the window, his own legs. The sound of them, the connection, the creativity, felt like home in a way I didn't expect. When we reached Atlanta, the venue was buzzing with preparation. Bigger stage, bigger crowd expected, bigger pressure hanging in the air. But something else was different too. People recognized me. Crew members nodded respectfully. Fans waiting outside asked, "Are you Naomi? Are you the one who opened the show last night?" They wanted photos. They wanted to tell me my voice moved them. It felt surreal, like stepping into a version of myself that I had only ever dreamed of. I floated through sound check with a calmness I didn't know I had. My voice felt steady. My breath felt grounded. And when I sang, my confidence shimmered through every note. After sound check, I slipped backstage to rest for a moment. That's when Tony approached me with his clipboard and that look he gets when he's trying to be gentle but knows he's about to deliver news that might hit hard. "Naomi," he said, "something's come up." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" He hesitated, then turned his phone toward me. A headline glared back at me. "Rising local artist Naomi Harper opens tour with stunning solo performance. Video goes viral overnight." Below it was a clip of me on stage, shaky smartphone footage, but the audio caught the emotion in my voice perfectly. The views were climbing by the second, comments pouring in, people sharing, people praising. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world felt like it shifted sideways. Eyes. Is this real? I whispered. Tony grinned. Very real. You're trending. Promoters want to bump you up in the show order tonight. Longer set. More spotlight. My heart pounded with excitement, but also with fear. More eyes meant more pressure, more expectation, more vulnerability. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. I can do it. He clapped my shoulder, proud. I knew you would. But when he walked away, I sat down alone on the edge of a crate backstage. I stared at the screen again, the views climbing by the thousands, the comments pouring in from people I'd never met who swore my voice changed something inside them. It should have felt like a dream, but my chest tightened instead. Because I knew who wasn't seeing it, who wasn't celebrating it, who wasn't here. I checked my messages again. Still nothing from Marcus. And then, almost violently, my phone buzzed. My heart jumped for a split second before I saw the caller ID. It wasn't Marcus. It was his sister, Talia. I didn't expect her call. Not now, not here, not in the middle of everything. When I answered, her voice came through rushed, anxious, almost shaky. Naomi? Hey, I'm sorry to call you while you're on tour. I thought you should know that Marcus isn't doing well. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She exhaled sharply. He's been really down since you left. He doesn't say it, but I can tell. He's withdrawn, barely eating, barely talking. I think he's realizing how much he took you for granted. I didn't want you to worry, but I also didn't want you in the dark. I sank deeper onto the crate, eyes burning. I don't know what to do, I whispered. You don't have to do anything, she said gently. He needs to figure himself out. But I thought you should know he's feeling it. And he misses you. That last sentence cracked something in me. Not enough to break me open, but enough to let an ache settle in my ribs. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. After the call ended, I sat still for a long time, letting the emotions swirl. Love. Sadness ups up. I see. It was all tangled now, a knot in my chest that I didn't know how to untie. But despite everything, despite the weight of the call, despite the ache in my heart, when the lights went down and the stage manager whispered, "You're up," something inside me settled. I walked out onto that Atlanta stage stronger than I had the night before. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything wasn't. Because I was learning to stand even when life pulled in opposite directions. Because I was learning that love didn't always come in the shape we wanted. Because I was learning that my dream had room for every emotion, even the painful ones. The crowd roared as I stepped into the light, and I let the sound wash over me like a baptism. I sang with everything I had, with every piece of my heart, the joy, the heartbreak, the hope, the uncertainty. I sang like someone who had discovered her own voice, and refused to let anything quiet it again. When the last note faded and the audience rose to their feet, clapping like they never wanted to stop, I realized something important. This journey wasn't just changing my life, it was transforming me, and I wasn't done becoming. Not even close. I didn't sleep much after the Atlanta show. Not because I wasn't tired. My body felt like it had been wrung out, every muscle buzzing with leftover adrenaline, but because everything inside me felt too loud to quiet down. Even back in the hotel room, wrapped in a robe with my hair damp from a too-hot shower, I could still feel the pulse of the crowd echoing under my skin. I could still hear their cheers. I could still feel the strength in my voice, the raw center of myself I had found on stage. But layered beneath all of that was the lingering weight of Talia's call. Marcus wasn't doing well. Those words kept replaying in my mind like a haunting refrain. For months, I had been the one struggling, the one questioning my worth, the one bending myself into softer shapes to fit around him. And now, right when I was finally blooming, he was breaking. It felt unfair. It felt ironic. It felt heartbreaking in a new kind of way. I wanted to text him. I wanted to ask if he was okay. I wanted to hear his voice, even if I didn't know what I'd say in return. But I didn't. I tucked my phone under the pillow and whispered to the ceiling. Not tonight. The universe must have heard me, because in the morning, everything shifted. The next city, Charlotte. We rolled in just after noon. The venue was stunning. A high-ceilinged auditorium with soft blue lighting and a stage that felt almost cathedral-like. The crew greeted us like we were veterans instead of newcomers. And Tony seemed more relieved than ever. "You're drawing crowds," he told me, scanning his tablet with a grin. "Ticket bumps in 3 cities after the video went viral. People are buying specifically to see you. My heart skipped. Meme? People were paying to hear me? I wasn't sure if I wanted to laugh, cry, or sit on the floor and absorb it. But before I could process it, Tony added, "There's someone here who wants to talk to you privately, a rep from a talent agency. They caught last night's show." My breath caught. A talent agency? I followed Tony backstage, my palms sweating with anticipation and nerves. We stepped into a quiet lounge area where a woman in a sleek blazer stood waiting. She looked polished, confident, like someone used to discovering potential and shaping it into something bigger. She extended her hand. "You must be Naomi. I've heard quite a lot about you already." I shook her hand, feeling my pulse hammer. "What can I do for you?" She smiled. "Actually, the question is what we can do for you." She began explaining: representation, development, connections, long-term plans. I tried to keep up, but it all felt like a massive wave threatening to sweep me off my feet, until she said something that stuck so deeply it pressed all the air out of my lungs. "You have a gift, a real one. Not just a nice voice, but presence, emotion, a story people can feel when you sing. You're the kind of artist the industry watches for, and we'd like to talk about developing you further." I blinked at her, trying to absorb the magnitude of it. She wanted to shape my career. She believed in me. She saw something that for so long I had to fight to see in myself. My throat tightened. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet," she said gently. "Just think about it. Enjoy your show tonight. We'll talk again." Then she left as smoothly as she arrived, disappearing down the hallway like a shifting future I wasn't sure how to hold. As soon as she was gone, I finally released the breath I'd been holding. Isaac found me moments later, his guitar slung casually across his back. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, but a little too slowly. "Yeah, it's just a lot." He studied me with those steady, perceptive eyes. "Good or bad?" I laughed softly. "I honestly don't know. Both?" He smiled, warm and patient. "Well, whatever it is, you don't have to figure it out alone." Something fluttered in my chest, something gentle, something grounding. Isaac had this way of making everything feel less heavy. I didn't trust that feeling yet, but I held on to it. That night's show changed everything. When I stepped onto the Charlotte stage, the crowd was massive, bigger than both previous nights combined. And yet, somehow, they felt close, like they were breathing with me. When I opened my mouth to sing, something inside me unlocked. The notes weren't just notes. They were confessions. They were memories. They were pieces of a heart still healing in real time. Halfway through one of my songs, I saw someone in the front row crying, a young woman with her hand over her mouth, tears shimmering down her cheeks. She met my eyes, and in that moment, something passed between us. Recognition. Understanding. Human connection in its purest form. I didn't miss a single note, but inside, I broke open. When the final applause hit me, loud, overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion, I knew something deep and irreversible had shifted. This wasn't just performing anymore. This was purpose. Backstage, the talent agency rep was waiting again. She smiled like she already knew the answer. "You're ready," she said softly. "You're not just opening for a tour, you're beginning a career." Those words should have made me ecstatic. And part of me was. But another part whispered, "What about Marcus? What about the life I left behind? What happens if this path takes me further and further from everything I knew?" I didn't have answers. Not yet. But that night, alone in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling in the quiet dark, I whispered something I had never had the courage to say out loud. "I want this. I really want this." And finally, for the first time, wanting something for myself didn't feel selfish. It felt like the truth. I woke up the next morning to a soft golden glow slipping through the hotel curtains, warming the room in a way that made everything feel gentler than it truly was. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then the ache in my voice reminded me. Charlotte had taken everything I had to give, and somehow, the world had given me more in return. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I stared at it for a long moment, afraid of whatever waited on the screen. There were messages from Tony, from the talent agency rep, from Isaac, and then, from him, Marcus. My heart dropped. I couldn't bring myself to open it. Not yet. I tucked the phone under the pillow and exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. Yesterday had been too full, too overwhelming, too life-shifting to process in just one night. But the world wasn't planning to slow down for me. Tony called me downstairs for breakfast, and when I arrived, he already had 2 coffees waiting. He pushed one toward me the same way he always did, grumpy on the surface, soft underneath. "There's news," he said, tapping at his ever-present tablet. My stomach tightened. "Good news or bad news? Depends on how you feel about your life changing forever," he replied. My breath caught. He turned the screen toward me. The agency sent over a preliminary offer. A real offer. On paper. A development deal. Vocal training. Branding. Tour expansion. And the one thing that made my brain stop functioning entirely. "They want to record an EP with you." My heart stumbled. Like, a real EP. A real record. Something that could live on streaming platforms and radio stations and playlists I grew up listening to. Something with my name. My voice. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," he replied softly, "but you should start thinking about it. Your world is moving fast, Naomi." He didn't have to point that out. I felt every inch of it. When I got back to my room, I finally opened Marcus's message. I saw the video. "I didn't know you could sing like that, and I'm proud of you." "I guess." I stared at the screen, numb. Then another message came. "I'm sorry for how things ended. I wasn't good to you. I know that now." My throat tightened. The apology I had once cried for, begged for, whispered into my pillow after too many silent nights, was suddenly here, delivered through pixels and timing that felt unfairly late. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, letting the hurt settle. Was this closure? A trap? A test? I didn't answer him. Not because I hated him, but because I didn't trust the part of myself that remembered loving him. The tour had the afternoon off. I walked through the city alone, sunglasses on, hoodie pulled low, quietly absorbing everything. A couple people recognized me. One even asked for a picture, and every interaction felt surreal. It wasn't fame. Not yet. But it was something. I sat on a bench near a fountain, letting the sound of rushing water soothe me. And somehow, Isaac found me, or sensed me, like he always did. "You disappeared," he said gently. I needed to think. "You always do," he said with a smile, sitting beside me. "Just don't think yourself out of living." His presence warmed something in me that I wasn't ready to name. Part comfort, part safety, part possibility. But the softness he stirred in me also scared me. Because the ghost of my past was still sending messages that I hadn't deleted. When we got back to the hotel, the universe threw me into a storm I wasn't prepared for. Marcus was standing in the lobby. My breath caught so hard it hurt. He looked smaller somehow, like the world had taken his edges and softened them into something fragile. He carried a suitcase. His shoulders were slumped. His eyes were tired in a way I had never seen before. "Naomi," he whispered. Everything in me screamed, "Why are you here?" But my lips said it much softer. "What are you doing here?" I needed to see you. Needed to apologize in person. Needed to tell you. His voice cracked. "Tell you that I'm falling apart without you." People turned to look. Tony froze across the lobby. Isaac stopped beside me like a wall ready to protect. I swallowed hard. "This isn't the place, Marcus." "Then where?" He pleaded. "Because every place feels wrong except the one you walked out of." His honesty twisted something painful inside me. Not because I wanted him back, but because I recognized that kind of desperation. I had lived it for far too long. We moved to a quiet conference room, arranged by Tony. Marcus sat across from me, wringing his hands the way he used to when he was hiding something painful. "I messed up," he said. "I know," I replied, voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not here to beg you to come back." That surprised me. "I'm here to tell you that I'm trying to change. I've been in therapy. I'm learning things about myself I should have faced years ago." I blinked. This was not the man I left. He continued, tears forming in his eyes. "I was threatened by your dreams, because I didn't have the courage to chase mine. And hurting you? It wasn't about you. It was about how much I hated myself." My eyes burned. Not for him, but for the version of me who once believed his lack of support was my fault. "And now?" I whispered. "Now I want you to be happy, even if it's not with me." The words hit me like a soft hammer, gentle, but powerful enough to break something open. He stood slowly. "I'll go. I just needed you to know I'm trying to be better. And, if you ever want to talk, I'm here." Then he walked out, quietly, respectfully, finally releasing me from a past I had carried for too long. I sat still long after he left, feeling the silence fill the room. And then it hit me. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of him. Not of my past. Not of choosing myself. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Not because someone let me go, but because I finally let myself go. I didn't sleep much that night. After Marcus walked out, I stayed in the conference room for a long time, just listening to the quiet thrum of the air conditioning and the faint hum of traffic outside the window. It felt like the universe had hit pause, giving me a moment to feel the weight of everything I'd been carrying. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt lighter. I should have felt victorious. But all I felt was hollow. Not because I wanted him back. Not because his confession stirred some forgotten love. But because facing the past, truly facing it, leaves an echo behind. Even after healing begins, the silence that follows can feel strangely loud. When I finally returned to my room, the hallways were quiet, dimly lit, almost dreamlike. I closed the door behind me and exhaled a long breath that felt like it came from years ago. My phone buzzed again. Isaac. Just checking on you. I'm here if you need anything. Simple, gentle. Without pressure. A message that didn't demand anything from me. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure I trusted myself to choose anything clearly when emotions still swirled like a storm inside me. I curled into bed and pulled the blankets over me, staring into the dark until sleep finally found me. I woke the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. A quiet knowing. A soft truth. A certainty that the past was no longer steering the wheel. I showered, got dressed, and headed to the tour's morning briefing, where Tony was already pacing with his tablet, muttering under his breath. "Good, you're here," he said as soon as he saw me. His eyes softened when he looked at my face. "You okay?" I nodded. "I think I am." "Good. Because we've got something big to discuss." He tapped the tablet, then turned it so I could see the screen. An email. From the agency. Subject line, immediate opportunity, time sensitive. My stomach fluttered. "What is it?" I asked. Tony inhaled deeply, like he needed extra oxygen for this one. "They want you to come to LA after the tour, to audition for a televised music showcase." I blinked. "What kind of showcase?" He gave me a slow, steady look. "The kind that launches careers." My pulse spiked. "They want you featured," he continued. "Front and center. Solo performance. Industry executives in the audience. Network producers. Major labels. People who can change your life in a single night." My mind went blank. This wasn't just an opportunity. This was a door. A doorway leading somewhere I never thought I'd even be allowed to stand near, let alone walk through. "What's the catch?" I asked cautiously. Tony chuckled. "You're smart. There's always a catch." He handed me the tablet. "The catch is, it's a commitment. A serious one. 6-month development, travel, media training, contracts, branding meetings, songwriting camps, studio hours. You can't do it halfway. If you say yes, your life becomes music." My heart twisted. A dream. But also a sacrifice. A huge one. "Think about it," Tony said softly. "Really think." Later that afternoon, while the crew prepared the stage for the next city, I slipped outside into the crisp air behind the venue. The sky was this beautiful mix of pale blue and silver, like the world was trying to call me. I hugged my arms and closed my eyes. And of course, that's when Isaac appeared. He always found me when I didn't know how to find myself. "You're quiet today," he said gently. "A lot's happening, Marcus?" "Partly," I admitted. "But there's more." I told him everything. The agency's offer, the showcase in LA, the 6-month commitment, the changes it would demand. He listened without interrupting, without offering solutions, without trying to sway me, just listening. When I finished, I exhaled shakily. "What do you think I should do?" He shook his head with a soft smile. "It's not my dream to decide." My shoulders slumped. "I know, but I don't want to make the wrong choice." "Naomi," he said, stepping closer, "since the day I met you, you've only moved in one direction, forward. Even when you were scared. Even when people doubted you. Even when you doubted you." I looked up at him, eyes stinging. "You're not the same woman who needed permission to dream. You're the woman who's taking stages by storm. You don't need me to tell you what path to take. You already know." Something warm, something steady, something terrifying moved through me. He wasn't telling me to go. He wasn't telling me to stay. He was telling me I had grown enough to choose. After sound check, I found myself alone again, seated in the empty auditorium. The seat stretched out in front of me like a quiet ocean. The stage lights above cast a soft halo around the microphone stand. I walked up to it slowly. I wrapped my hand around the mic. I took a breath and imagined singing on a stage in LA under bright lights, in front of the people who decide futures. As a woman who had rebuilt herself from the inside out, I imagined the version of myself I would have to become stronger, more certain, more honest, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of her. I was ready to meet her. A single tear slid down my cheek, not from fear, but from recognition. I whispered into the empty room. "I think I'm ready." The words echoed gently, as if the walls themselves agreed. I didn't know what the next months would bring. I didn't know how the past would fit into my future. I didn't know what would happen with Isaac, or what Marcus's visit would mean in the long term. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was done shrinking. I was done apologizing for wanting more. I was done dimming myself to make others comfortable. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for life to happen to me. I was choosing it, actively, deliberately, bravely, and whatever came next. I was ready to walk into it with my head high and my voice steady. Because this was just the beginning. I used to think that strength was about pushing through pain without flinching, or achieving something so big that the world had no choice but to clap for you. But now, standing where I am, looking back at the road it took to get here, I understand something so much more profound. Strength is choosing to heal, even when staying hurt would be easier. When I first walked into that tiny studio with my nerves rattling my bones, I didn't realize I was taking the first step toward my own freedom. And when I stood on that stage for the first time, my voice shaking like a leaf, I didn't realize I was beginning to trust myself again. But healing doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up with confetti or applause. It arrives quietly, like breath returning to lungs that forgot how good oxygen feels. I think about all the nights when I cried into a pillow so no one could hear me, when Thomas's dismissive words felt heavier than gravity, when my desk job drained the color out of my days until my dreams looked foolish even to me. But I kept going, not because I felt brave, but because something inside me refused to die. That small spark, the one we ignore, the one we underestimate, kept whispering, "Try again. You're meant for more." And now, I see it clearly. Healing is power. Not perfection, not success, not applause. Healing. Healing taught me how to forgive myself for shrinking. It taught me how to rebuild the parts of me that life tried to break. It taught me that no dream is too old, too distant, or too unrealistic if the person holding it refuses to let go. To anyone listening to my story, I want you to hear me clearly. Your dreams are not ridiculous. Your voice is not too small. Your age is not an expiration date. Your past is not a chain. And anyone who doubts you is not the final judge of your destiny. If I had listened to the people who didn't believe in me, I would still be sitting at that desk, shrinking myself to fit a life that suffocated me. I would still be apologizing for wanting something bigger, brighter, more meaningful. I would still be convincing myself that someday was enough. But I chose differently. And you can too. Life will throw storms, unexpected ones, unfair ones, painful ones, but storms don't prove weakness. Storms reveal strength. And dreams? They aren't fragile. They're seeds. They grow in the dark, in the doubt, in the soil of your struggles. And once they root, they rise. I rose. Not quickly, not gracefully, not without bruises, but I rose. And if you're listening to me now, wherever you are, whatever stage of life you're in, I want you to know this. You can rise too. Rise for the girl you used to be. Rise for the woman you're becoming. Rise for the future that's calling your name. Rise even if your voice shakes, even if your heart is scared, even if nobody claps at first. Rise because the world needs what only you can bring. And above all, don't stop. Don't settle. Don't give up on the dream that keeps you alive inside. I didn't. And it changed everything. Be sure to subscribe to Healing Rise Nation for weekly videos. At Healing Rise Nation, we share uplifting narratives of women who have faced adversity, betrayal, heartbreak, self-doubt, and moments where life tried to dim their light. These aren't stories of staying hurt. They are stories of rising, reclaiming, and remembering who you were always meant to be. Thank you for tuning in.